Whenever someone says the phrases, it's a boy or it's a girl, there's probably certain colors that you think of. If someone says it's a boy, you probably think of the color blue. And when someone says it's a girl, you probably think of the color pink. Colors are just one of the many stereotypes that men and women have been facing for a long time. You might be wondering, why do companies do this? Why do certain companies designate pink products for girls and blue ones for boys? Well, they think that these colors are attractive to each respective gender. So, is specifically targeting products this way just a way for them to profit more? Or is it just plain sexist? Technically, it could probably be both. These products and advertisements that we see affect how we think about ourselves. Of course, a lot of our preferences come from our own biological differences, but a huge part of them come from what we see around us. This poses the question, what came first? Girls liking pink and boys liking blue, or people telling us to like these colors? This is where the issue comes in. Back in the 1940s, the colors were actually switched. Boys were supposed to like pink, while girls were supposed to like blue. And then out of nowhere, companies decided to switch the colors. So this makes us realize, are we even given the choice to choose what our favorite colors are? Or do other people choose it for us? From before we were even born, we have been falling prey to these stereotypes. If we were expected to be a girl, then our relatives and friends would buy us pink onesies and pink blankets and pink socks. And if we were expected to be a boy, then we would get blue clothes. And from then, we have been experiencing something called market segmentation, which is the theory that businesses have that dividing their consumers into smaller groups is better for their business. When we were children, we would always see in advertisements how girls were the ones playing with Barbies and boys were the ones playing with action figures. It was really never the other way around. In fact, the Lego brand was originally meant for boys. Then the Lego company decided to create something called Lego Friends, and they targeted this towards girls by showing girls in the advertisements and having female characters in the toy set. And this resulted in a 25% increase in revenue for them, mostly from the girl population. Even simple products like soap. The Dove soap, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that, it was originally meant for men. And then they realized that the traditional rounded edges of the Dove soap are way too feminine. So they changed that and they made it squared off instead, and then they targeted that towards men. They even added the words Dove Men Plus Care to make sure that everyone knew that the product was for men. Even simple products like soap are being given a gender. We always think that we are in a world where marketing strategists market for us and our interests. This is actually an illusion. In reality, these strategists tell us what our interests are supposed to be by loading us with all of these advertisements. So, what other effect does gender stereotyping have besides all of these materialistic ones? As a young child, as any young child, girls are always told that they need to be proper and pretty and paint their nails and wear makeup, while boys are told to be strong and athletic. And because of that, if any boy or girl does anything that's outside of their gender norm, they're pointlessly judged. If a girl wants to do sports, they're considered too boyish. If a boy wants to go into the makeup industry, for example, they're looked down upon and they're judged. And because of something called hyperfemininity and hypermasculinity, these men and women are even more closed off into these gender norms. Hyperfemininity is the exaggeration of feminine behavior, like being soft and flirtatious and graceful. And with hypermasculinity, that's the exaggeration of masculine behavior, like being aggressive and demanding and ambitious. Women are expected to be natural nurturers, while men are supposed to be natural leaders. If a man wants to spend more time with his family, for example, then they're considered soft and less masculine. And a female who wants to take up a position that requires them to be demanding, it's just sometimes not possible because they're too emotional because they're women. Especially for mothers and pregnant women, they also face the same struggles. According to a survey taken in 2019 in Spain, it showed that mothers are on average 35.9% less likely to be called for a job interview than fathers. Both mothers and fathers are equally responsible for their children, yet mothers don't have the same privilege of being called for a job interview. Because of these stereotypes that are being perpetuated from a very young age, children are subject to bullying. They're afraid of being their true selves and doing what they want because they're afraid that they won't fit in. Men feel like they can't be sensitive or they can't cry because they think that they'll be considered soft. And girls question their abilities and downplay them because they think that they can't be independent or assertive without being called bossy. Clearly, these stereotypes are not just superficial, and they're having a damaging impact on society. So how do we get rid of them then? From a young age, children should be taught of different ideas. For example, boys and girls should be able to play with the same toys, and they should have the same dreams of pursuing any career they want. Even simple things like boys and girls doing the same chores, like not only making girls do the domestic jobs like folding clothes and making boys do jobs like taking out the trash. Even simple things like that can make a difference. As long as these ideals are taught from a young age, they can have a bigger impact on people as adults. Men and women are not the only genders who face discrimination. Transgender people have been facing it for a long time too. It comes from a lot of social and cultural customs and a severe social stigma that is just intensified by the fact that there's just not enough resources to help trans people accurately express themselves. For example, if they needed to sign up for anything, usually the only two options on documentation for gender are man or woman, or male and female. And this does not account for the broad spectrum of transgender people, including non-binary people, queer people, non-conforming, and even more. As you can see on this chart here, around 43% of the LGBT population lives in states with high policy tallies. This basically means that they have a lot of laws that protect trans people. And since it's only 43%, that means that over half of the LGBT population live in places where their rights aren't protected. In addition, about 17 states nationwide don't have enough protection for trans workers. And in fact, there isn't really any federal law that specifically protects LGBTQ employees from discrimination, which means some employers even think it's legal to harass and even fire an employee for coming out on the job. Trans people face discrimination in a multitude of ways. They face discrimination in education, housing, and especially employment. They face a lot of health disparities in which they have a lack of primary care and alarmingly high rates of HIV infection and attempted suicide. In addition, many transgender people are at a risk of poverty, since a lot of them earn under $10,000 a year. And trans women, especially colored trans women, are always at risk of violence. Avita Adara, a 41-year-old transgender woman, had to quit her job at a major healthcare company because she was constantly misgendered and discriminated against. Unfortunately, when she quit her job, she had to face having no health insurance and barely having enough money to get by. She had to give up her entire 401k plan just to survive. And she's not the only one. Many trans women and men and other kinds of trans people face the same kind of issues. And in order to avoid this kind of harassment, they have to hide themselves and hide their personal relationships because they're afraid of being judged or even mistreated. All of these stereotypes and inequality among the different genders restrict them and don't allow them to choose the professions that they want. Who knows, a man who wants to go into the makeup industry could be just as good at, if not better than a woman who wants to do the same thing. And a woman who wants to do a leadership position should be able to do that without being compared to a man for it. And a trans person should be allowed to choose the profession they want, but some people aren't even hired because of their sexuality. People don't have the opportunities to express themselves and reach their highest potential because these stereotypes act as a barrier. So how can we individually break that barrier? Well, even the simple thing, like being aware of it, not being ignorant of how all of these stereotypes are all around us in advertisements, TV, magazines, social media, and even more. And we can educate other people about it as well, so they are more informed about it. Even other things like respecting people based on their sexual identity, so that more people are more open to expressing themselves. And if you see any kind of sexist action around you, you should be the first one to point them out. One person's action can go a very long way. Finally, if you are interested in something that's outside of a gender norm, go ahead and pursue it. And maybe other people will be inspired to do something like that as well. We as a whole should also advocate for the changing of laws for the better for transgender people. If you see any kind of sexist action happening around you, you can report to organizations like the US Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they can take enough action. State and local agencies should enforce their non-discrimination policies, and healthcare facilities should be able to provide adequate healthcare for trans patients and workers. By advocating for rights and opportunities that we all deserve, we can form a community that is more accepting for all genders. Thank you.